Welcome, everybody, to Haven of Horror. I am Subject. I've got Milton with us here today. We're going to discuss, in this episode, Nosferatu, the 1922 German loose adaptation of Dracula.
Incredibly
The
loose.
very, very loose. The Bram, is it Bram Stoker?
Bram.
Stoker.
Bram's. Let's see. Shoot. Well, I'm pretty sure it's Bram because it's short for Abraham. So.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I did not know that. So Milton, tell us what you thought of Nosferatu.
Well, I liked it. Of course, I'm one of those guys that likes like the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. So, I mean, I'm familiar with like early German film, like this stuff, and M, which is like M means like murder. One of the first films that had like a sense of moral ambiguity about it. Uh, but yeah, but no, I like Nosferatu. It's a good early version of like dark fantasy inside a film, and just in general, just successful silent film,
Yeah,
and also a good example of a copyright infringement, apparently, because there's a history of that, but we can talk about that in a second.
and we will. So I need to preface all of my opinions by saying that I watched the version that is free on YouTube, not realizing that this was on Shudder. If anyone is not aware, it is on Turner Classic Movies YouTube channel, and that version is not the version to watch. The words, because obviously this is a silent film. It's from 1922. The I don't know what you call them, but you know how they put like the words like explaining what you're seeing in the scene are
I think.
almost unreadable in some scenes.
Hmm.
And the soundtrack is not properly mixed. So you know how like the score will rise during like an exciting scene? It would rise to the point where it was like just noise, like mush, and it was really starting to give me a headache. So
Okay.
I am going to go ahead and review this because it is scheduled, but I do want to advise everyone that I'm going to rewatch this on Shudder and see if I like it more at that point, and I might record like an addendum to this video. But for right now, these are my thoughts. Hopefully, you guys don't crucify me too much for them, but they are. It is what it is. So we always describe the movie that we are watching first, of course. But I do want to advise as well, this is going to be a full spoiler discussion. Granted, this movie is from 1922, so I don't know if spoilers counts with how old it is, but I do like to give our audience a proper warning. So, Milton, I'm going to let you summarize Nosferatu.
It's my pleasure. So, Nosferatu begins with basically a real estate agent of sorts in, the 1800s. He is basically instructed by his boss to go answer an invoice from a Count Orlok, who's interested in purchasing property in the area, in the town of Wisburg. Um, the main character, Hutter, basically goes out to answer the invoice and to actually encounter Count Orlok and propose a certain plot of land with a certain house that actually happens to be across the street from him. And, just generally see if the tenant is on the up and up, if he exists, if he's wealthy, that sort of thing. He goes over there, and as he asks people around about Count Orlok, he gets strange looks and general, feelings of uneasiness. And eventually he discovers that Count Orlok is Nosferatu, otherwise known as Count Dracula, otherwise known as the vampire.
Yeah, so obviously this is a very early film. Black and, well, I wouldn't say black and white, but there's a number of colors used here to differentiate different scenes and different what's happening. Um, like I said, I had a hard time following what was happening in this movie because I couldn't make out some of the text on those screens. So I don't have a lot to say to this plot, but I will say I did enjoy the soundtrack quite a bit. Obviously, this movie relies quite a bit on soundtrack since there is no other audio. It always makes me laugh that they're called silent movies when there's an ongoing score.
Well,
But
I mean,
I get
the
the
idea,
idea. It
yeah,
just Makes me laugh.
It's literally called like Nosferatu: A Symphony of Horror. A lot of
Mhm.
people remember Nosferatu for, you know, the main titular title, but it is primarily a symphony with basically a visual accompaniment with it that lasts about an hour and a half.
So we mentioned this a minute ago, but obviously, with this, there was a copyright infringement. This is basically an unauthorized, uh, low budget German remake of the classic Dracula novel, but with enough names changed to try to defeat the, get slip past that copyright.
And it didn't.
Unfortunately, it didn't work.
No.
A judge ordered most of the copies of this movie to be destroyed, which is a little weird to me to think about because nowadays it would just be settled out of court, right? Like they just
Yeah.
pay them. But obviously things worked back differently back in the 20s.
Yeah.
But as fate would have it, some copies survived, and it has become a classic. So I'm really excited to rewatch this. But everything I'm saying in this video will be, based on this viewing.
And for those who wonder, why did the court thing happen in the first place? It's because Stoker's heirs sued the people over the adaptation. They didn't like it. So,
Yes,
yeah,
thank you.
so yeah, that's mainly why. It wasn't like the German government basically like settling it on behalf of others. It was the heirs sued for it. And yeah.
Yeah. So I would love to like go back in time and see people's reaction to this movie
Oh,
because I can
absolutely.
imagine this was horrifying in the 20s. Um, I have to give the utmost kudos to Max Schreck. No,
Mm.
not the guy from Batman Returns.
Yeah.
Um, his performance as Nosferatu is legendary. He is a wonderful physical actor that gets a lot said with no dialogue.
He kills it in this movie. He looks so creepy and deformed. It's great. They did a great job with the costume and effective use of lighting so that you couldn't like see his full form like all the time. So it's German expressionism has like a great sense of camera work because because when you don't have like voice acting, you really have to constantly engage the audience with constant visual stuff.
Which
And
in this movie can lead to some amazing moments, like everything with Nosferatu, and some sillier moments. And it is a struggle, right, to not just compare this to today's standards, because if you compare it to today's standards, it's very
no,
different.
of course it would be probably mostly boring to people nowadays.
And this is my first silent film, so I'm also completely out of my like comfort area. Um, but it did kind of amuse me at some of the overacting the other characters have to do because they can't use dialogue. Um, the main character, like, there's a scene where he's like getting out of bed, and it's so overacted, it's hilarious.
There was
But it
yeah,
was the standard, back then.
yeah, Hutter like he's looking at the book that describes like the etymology of the vampire, and it's like in a very dramatic form of like remember this, oh, vampires don't exist.
Yeah,
And it gave me a laugh. But that sort of dramatic acting was like present on stage acting for like hundreds of years beforehand. This was the frame of reference that they were working with, putting something to, this sort of medium, something that was still very new.
yeah. And so I appreciated what he was doing, and I think that might have been part of why it was harder for me to get into because, like I said, this is very outside of my comfort area. I hadn't seen anything quite like this. But I want to give a movie, credit where it's due. Nobody took me out of the movie, other than just the issues that I was having with the transfer that I watched. Did you have any actors that you thought were worse than others?
Any actors that were worse than others? Well, I mean, it's the actor for Thomas Hutter. I forget his exact. I think it's like Gustav von like Wankenheim. Um, a lot of how you feel about this movie is going to be based on his performance. Then also Max Schreck as Count Orlok. Max Schreck, he does his job well. He's because his performance is focused on being the bad guy, being the villain. And you would like initially get him being a bit more subdued at the beginning, but that being more of a monster towards the end. It's sometimes it's hard for like an actor to kind of show a bit more range because Count Orlok doesn't have a whole lot of range. Hutter does in this movie, but still a fairly decent job. There were some of the extras like I don't know, Knock, I think is his name, like the head real estate guy. I think some of his performance was a little odd, personally. You know, the guy in the jail cell. That's probably
Oh, is
who I
that who
would say
that
might.
was?
Yeah, I think that's the guy for me that might be the weakness of this movie because
Is
it's
he
good
the
to
one that has that really goofy laugh like halfway through the movie?
yeah, I'm fairly sure
Okay.
that's the guy. Yeah,
That was at the
it's
point that I'd given up trying to track what was happening.
I'm, their German expressionism is like we're trying to communicate so much so we don't have so many text cards
Mhm.
going on because quite a few movies had a lot of text cards and some of them didn't do as well when they were when a lot more successful films like showed more visual stuff on film because people are not exactly interested in going to the movies to read. They're there to see the visual, masterpiece and spectacle. So
And that doesn't bother me. I don't know about you, but I watch everything with subtitles. So the reading part didn't bother me. It was just that, like I said, I couldn't read what was on the screen. So yeah, I'm interested to see if I like it better on a second viewing. Um, I like the soundtrack, and I don't know. This may not be a fair thing to say, and again, it also might have been the mix, the one that I was watching, but I almost wish there was parts without a soundtrack because about halfway through, I got really exhausted of the soundtrack because it's just an organ. Um, Not to take anything away from the score, it is phenomenal and it helps add the atmosphere. I don't know, and again, it might also just be because I'm not familiar with this genre, so I'm feeling a little self conscious about critiquing it. When it's not my bag, but like halfway through, I got really sick of that fucking organ.
well, simplistic symphony of stuff. I mean, there are more instruments, but the organ is the most prevalent thing. It's definitely hard to judge, especially organ music today, considering we would absolutely, if we see a vampire movie, more than likely there's going to be organs in it.
Mhm.
This is one of the films that kind of started that. So you're seeing the beginning of a trope, of a cinematic trope here. Um,
Well, I
but
mean,
yeah,
this is the
especially,
first vampire film, right?
I think so. Fairly short.
So I would say this has probably started all of the tropes.
I I guess so. No, this is not the first. There were two others, Dracula and Dracula's Death.
Oh, there was
But
Dracula films before this.
only two though. But I mean, we're going to credit most of this to Nosferatu because this is the one that people, is actually
Remember,
famous. It's actually Oscar nominated. So,
really,
yeah.
this was nominated.
Or sorry,
Interesting.
no, sorry. And there was an Oscar nominated film for the fictionalization of making this movie. Sorry. I
Get your
mixed up in my head.
facts straight, Milton.
Yeah. But no, like most of the tropes here are present in Nosferatu. It kind
Mhm.
of started here. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So I don't know about you, Milton, but personally, because like I said, I wasn't enjoying this. I don't have a lot to say about this movie. The main thing I did enjoy was, Max Schreck as Nosferatu. I lost the name there, even though it's the name of the movie. But I don't really have much else to say. It's other than the characters' names being changed, and I think the ending. I'm not super familiar with the Dracula book. I need to change that. It's
Well,
mostly just a straightforward adaptation of that story.
well, so I have read the story. If I had to grade this as an adaptation of, it's not a good adaptation. It has ideas, but it's not the same. A lot of these older movies were not very closely adapting the books that they would take. So in the story of Dracula, you had a Van Helsing go and visit Count Orlok, but it wasn't on a business. It's not close. I'll say that much. This is his own thing.
Mhm.
So, but I still enjoyed it. Um, One thing that I found interesting in terms of theming was, at least how I interpret it, Hutter's wife, symbolically sacrificing herself to basically rid the town of an evil, because she reads in her book the only way to like kill Nosferatu is to essentially lure him to basically feed long enough for the sun to rise.
Mhm.
So that's Lord Sacrifice, and like ending on that, it's a very dour note to end on. Bittersweet, but at least, a sacrifice is made to destroy evil. I
Well,
find
and
indeed
I am a
interesting.
sucker for a bittersweet ending.
And this is where these tropes start in movies like
Yeah,
this. So
yeah.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, and there's also a little bit of that, just like the fear of the unknown, right? Like this is very much uh because I guess we should mention as well, this is also a period piece. It's set in the mid 1800s. Um,
It made in 1922.
Made in
So
1922. But so even when this came out, it was a period piece. And there's like, there is a reference because there's a point in the movie where Nosferatu goes somewhere else to another place. I can't remember. And you see this like newspaper on the screen, and it's like a new plague has run through the area. People are mysteriously getting neck bite marks on their neck. Uh, Officials are like shutting down any ships that they fear might be carrying the plague.
yeah,
Um,
references to Black Death, but I mean the plague still existed for quite a bit of time, but it's definitely much more reminiscent of way back when. Um, yeah. But this was also like post World War One, where Germany was not in the best of shape, especially like coming out of the Treaty of Versailles. Its pride as a nation and its people were really downtrodden. So a lot of these expressionist films were coming out of the woodwork. Um, Very dark themes, very dour messages that were rather sober-minded. A lot of dark fantasy. Um, lot of like, but a lot of good films before the Nazis came in, and then the Nazis ruined everything.
so let me ask you this then, because you're much more familiar with this era of filmmaking than I am. This movie obviously uses a lot of different colors.
Mhm.
Is that on purpose, or is that just a thing of the time, like limited technology? The film is
That is a deliberate thing, and the reason why is because you see day for night shots. All of the different colors are there to basically describe a certain point in time. If it's like a dark blue, like what you see in like some cuts, especially when Hutter's visiting Count Orlok, he's there during the night. It's basically on limitations of technology. Shooting black and white film, old black and white film during the night is not a great idea. So shooting it for a day for night shot and then putting a filter on it is a much more, plausible way of filming like a scene at night, for instance. If the
okay.
filter is clear, it's usually during the day.
Okay, so let me ask you this then, because there's a shot of Nosferatu and he's all bundled up in like clothing, right?
Mhm.
And the filter's clear. So, but they say that this is a traditional vampire that can't go out during the day. Am I understanding then that that is a day shot with him outside, but the clothes are protecting him from?
That was actually a shot during the night, but some shot reverse shots. That might just be a mistake right there of basically, or a choice where we don't want to put the heavy filter on a close-up shot. We're doing a shot reverse shot between Hutter and Nosferatu. We kind of just want to be able to see the figure, clearly.
Oh, okay.
But,
Well, I was
but
wondering
you
because
know,
Buffy plays with that a little bit in its later seasons, and I was wondering if that may be a reference to this.
but I mean, we have other like properties like later on to say if you're heavily bundled up as a vampire, you're not going to get immediately killed by the sunlight. But I'm fairly sure that was still a scene that was shot as a day for night, shot.
Well,
So,
I don't have much else to say other than I did want to mention that, of course, Robert Eggers has been rumored to be remaking this movie for a long time now.
which I think is pretty cool.
I would be 100% on board with a Robert Eggers directed remake of this movie. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm up for it. I mean, of course we have a remake culture. So a lot of the times where you say, but just hold off, don't do remakes of classic movies. I think this is far enough removed where we could get another remake because we've had other, I think Nosferatu remakes like in the past, but
No,
a
there's
Robert
one in the
Eggers one
'70s.
is something like that. But
Yeah,
Robert Eggers would be a, yeah, I think that would be a cool choice. I'd go for something like that.
yeah.
Also, I
Well,
don't think we've gotten an actual like vampire film since like Dracula Untold, so it's been 7 years. So
yeah, it's been a while. Well, I'm just gonna go ahead and give my score. My final thoughts are I don't have any because I need to rewatch this movie with a proper transfer that's like unwatchable. But right now I got to be honest, guys. I got to give this a 2.5. Um, I respect the hell out of this movie. Don't get me wrong, but the copy I watched, I was like, this is not for me. I don't know what's going on. I don't understand any of this shit. So I'm gonna pass the battalion to Milton for this one. Final thoughts and score.
yeah, so I'll accept the baton. I so viewing it as a film of its time, I give it a 4. And the reason why is because I love the camera work, I love the music, I love the a lot of the work that went into it. Everything is visually engaging, at least to me. Um, in a film, and there's like a lot of movies where I can like extrapolate what's going to happen, and like there's a lot of like dead air sometimes, and a lot of like fat that can cut from a movie. This is a movie where you don't cut a whole lot of fat out. A lot of things are chosen very deliberately, and things are crafted fairly well to precision. So, of course, would I recommend this to general audiences? No. Be- But if you want to understand film of its time, if you want a good connection to history, and if you just like vampire movies, I highly recommend it. So yeah.
Well, that is all the time we have for today. We are trying a new format. We're still doing the two movies, but they're going to go up one by one to give more time for each movie to breathe, as well as people who are only interested in one of the movies that we're covering don't have to try to find where we start the second movie, blah, blah, blah. So if you are like this video, let us know if you like this format. Give us a thumbs up or hit that subscribe button, whichever. We appreciate you even just clicking on the video. And we hope you have a wonderful night. Thanks for watching.